Welcome to Dusty Little Wastelanders, written by L.L. Smith, narrated by L.L. Smith. Chapter 4, Catching Up.
Enry, what are you doing? Donald shouted, following me into the storefront.
I stormed into the store, my eyes fixed onto the back shelf. Donald trailed behind me, TM close at his side. TM still wasn't eager to take Donald's hand, but his being beside Donald still stung. I traipsed straight to the back of the store and snagged the sleeping bag off the shelf. I turned to pay for something I should have bought days ago, but my path was blocked by Donald's girth. His worn, cynical eyes dug into me like brown stingers. I'd never paid attention to him until now, but his eyes were just about the same color as my hair. That was something Donald was losing by the day. That bald spot on the back of his grand hair was like a bullseye calling out, "Hey, make fun of me." His dense wrinkles sunk into his reddened skin, resembling more of a burn than a sign of wisdom. I could remember that day we'd met him in the mine. His skin was as pale as a glass of milk, and less aged, too, by my recollection. 3.5 months wandering the wastelands hadn't been too kind on Mr. Donald. I tend to wonder if his beard was ever trimmed. It at least wasn't graying yet. But when it reaches down to a man's clavicle, that's too long. Beliefs or no beliefs, that man needed a shave. I wouldn't consider Donald a fat man, but he was plenty wide enough to block this entire aisle of the store.
Enry, you're dealing with your grief in an incredibly reckless way right now, Donald warned.
How do you figure? I spilled out my dumb question. We're in this mess because I can't remember for the life of me to buy TM a sleeping bag.
You're going to buy a $5 sleeping bag when you only have $7 to your name, Donald stated. And you're going to do all this while your brother's missing.
Don't say that, I snapped. Kyle isn't missing. He's headed east, and we're headed that way to pick him up.
Kyle is headed east, yes. He is also missing, most likely kidnapped, and in need of rescue, Donald asserted. You'll need to face this reality, Enry.
I took better care of my brother than that, I sulked. What would my parents say?
I don't know. I never met them, Donald said. But I do know what my parents would say. You better get his ass back or we'll whoop you in front of a Sunday crowd.
How am I supposed to find him? I asked. He was my navigator. I couldn't find myself through a barn with a single wide-ass door.
You still got TM in me, Enry. Donald's tone stayed positive. We'll just have to play Kyle's role in his absence.
That's great, I moaned. Draw a picture of a woman on the map and you'll never take your eyes off it, and little TM literally can't tell me where to go. Probably hates me too much to anyway.
I'm really trying to help you here, Enry. Donald's friendly tone was fading.
Ever think maybe I don't need all this help? I remarked.
Look, Enry, I know you're scared.
Donald leaned in close. I could smell the morning on his breath.
But do you know what's scarier than what we're about to do? Being out in those wastelands all alone, being kidnapped, and being without your brother.
His words slapped like a son of a bitch, but it was what I needed to hear. I looked to him and then down to TM with a newfound determination in my eyes. Let's go find him. I put the sleeping bag back with the mess of bags on the wooden shelf. I turned to leave and snagged a map on my way out the store. The most important thing in this store was also the only free thing in this store. I barreled through the front door, but my focus was captured. My distracted self hadn't noticed this my first go-around, or perhaps my damaged mind had shielded me from it. There was a litter of hand-drawn missing posters plastered against the wall in this store. They were slapped up there right at the entrance. I counted. There were 32 individual posters, and quite a few more, but they were all repeats. 32 missing children, all from Moontown. What the hell is going on around here? We'd spent 3 days with TM, and he'd been pursued on 4 separate occasions. My recent interactions made these abductions impossible to dismiss as runaways. My boots pounded the wood storefront porch with purpose. I slammed the map onto the shanty's outdoor dining table. I unfolded it against the table's rough wood grain. It was a full map of the wasteland. A collection of shanty cities cluttered sporadic pieces of the vast wastelands on this map, each shanty city like an island in an ocean. I never quite realized the amount of nothing there was in this world, but this map painted it plain and simple. The wastelands was a big old dusty pile of nothing, and humanity's few piles of civilization barely left so much of a footprint on this world.
There's Moontown. Donald pointed to Moontown's collection of shanties on the map. We headed east from there and most likely ended up here. Donald moved his finger to one of the few desert merchants just east of Moontown. Judging by this map, there is only one town east of Moontown. Hillville, Donald announced, pointing out Hillville on the map. It was a smaller collection of shanties than Moontown, but smaller hopefully meant safer. If I recall correctly, Hillville is home to the McDougal Plantation, a plantation built on slave labor. So whoever kidnapped Kyle is looking to sell him as a slave. I confirmed. That'd be my best current hunch, yes, Donald answered.
So what's the plan then, I asked. We could try and beat them to Hillville, work our asses off, and then buy Kyle back in the auction.
Well, Donald thought aloud, that's a violence-free plan, which the Lord Hickafu approves of. But do you have any idea what laborers sell for in Hillville?
No clue, I answered.
Given that Richard McDougal is a self-made millionaire in this economy, I'd say the laborers in that auction will be worth way more than we could ever make in a couple shifts. What's your plan then? I asked. We're gonna have to intercept the kidnapper before he gets to Hillville and take Kyle back by force. I'm willing to bet he'll have backup waiting for him in Hillville. The slave trade is a major criminal market and they don't like being fucked with. Well, that's a solid plan, but how the heck are we supposed to find the guy in all this wasteland? I waved my hand over the landmass on the map. TM left off the shanty's porch and began to scoot his shoes through the dirt. He waved at us, clearly trying to draw our attention to something. He continued to thrash his shoes all around the dirt, kicking up all sorts of crap. It was some sort of wild routine of his. He'd jump, scoot, and stomp his boots through the dusty dirt. He turned to us after each action, as though we could make sense of it. He pointed down after each motion. I couldn't tell if I was expected to watch his boots or the ground. I followed his finger to the ground, and that's when it hit me. That was it. He was kicking up dirt. The ground in the wastelands was a dirt, sand, and dust combination. Plenty loose enough to leave tracks, even if they stepped lightly. TM, your brains are swelling! I reached out for a hug, but TM pulled away. That's a damn good observation, Donald confirmed. We should head up the road some. That'd put us more in line with where we would have been headed if we headed due east from Moontown. It was decided, and we were on our way once more. We were charged forward with a newfound love for tracking. We stomped through the dry desert, the sun glaring off the sand. We met our own tracks searching for someone else's. We spotted any remnants of movement our entire trek. Most were immediately dismissed as animal tracks, but Donald kept assuring us that we hadn't made it up to where we were in line with Moontown yet. We were the only folks out wastelanding, which in all of our years of traveling had grown quite regular for us. We'd run into a few old wastelanders from time to time, but for the most part, we're the only people as far as we could see. Some cities were going through great lengths to do away with wastelanders. I don't pay any attention to politics, but there were constant anti-wastelander laws being passed in the capital. It all felt kind of silly, seeing as how there was never anyone around here to enforce them. Tim and I started a bit of a game on our journey. We'd begin taking light steps through the path. The idea was to see who could leave the least tracks while we traversed this wasteland. Donald refused to participate despite the clear aid this game offered to bring our tracking efforts. Our leg lifts and landings grew ultra animated with each step, and we both about fell out with each giggle fit watching the other walk like an absolute fool. The game lost its effectiveness after I had the first spill. I got my feet all tangled up trying to stat fancier than a dancer and fell flat on my butt. I was quick to pop back up on my feet, and the dirt on my tongue served as a taste of defeat. Tim couldn't contain his belly laugh. The first full-on laugh I'd ever got out of him. He about fell into the dirt himself, laughing so dang much. It felt good, better than a well-composed symphony. It was a sign of progress in so many ways. I wanted to wrap him up in a hug and apologize, but I didn't push my luck. Our little game managed to chew up enough time to line us up with Moontown once again. Donald stopped us with a bold palm. I followed his eyes. There was a clear set of tracks in the dirt, and more signs of something being dragged behind it. The tracks fell to the left of the drag marks. Whatever was being dragged was draped over someone's shoulder, if I had to guess. These same tracks carried on for miles in the loose dirt, miles I'd already decided to walk. How did we miss this, I asked. We didn't come this way earlier, Donald said. We left Moontown and were led straight to the marketplace. I glared a moment, deciding on how to handle that direct jab. We've got to follow it. It'll be dark soon, Donald said, looking up to the fallen sun. They might rest at night, which will give us a chance to catch up to them and jump the guy. Oh, hell yes, I cheered. The three of us stuck close to the tracks. We followed them for miles as they stayed due east, a positive sign that we were following the right tracks. The endless nothing expanded on our every side. Not a single city was visible, and no marketplaces were around. This had to be our guy. We walked a few more miles and several more hours before the night stuck in. Walking in the cool of night was much easier than the blistering heat of day, but we needed to catch up to Kyle's captors, and I would have run through heat stroke to get him back. We'd followed the tracks for so long, so many miles, and so many hours. It took me a couple of winks, but I eventually spotted the fact that our tracks were veering north. I turned back to check the path behind us, and we were definitely drifting north. The tracks behind us showed clear as day as they turned into the distance. The tracks seemed to be heading up a dune. I kept up on the dune without thinking until I noticed Donald had fallen back and was waving me down with a great urgency. He'd stopped me just before I'd come to the dune's peak. I stumbled back down toward...
Hey there, what's up? LL Smith here. Thank you so much for enjoying my audiobook. I'm going to interrupt you real quick and say, if you get real anxious to hear what happens next and just can't wait till next week, or if you get the urge to just support such a stunning, ruggedly handsome, and awesome independent creator such as myself, I encourage you highly to go follow the link in the description and support the official release. Thank you so much for listening, and let's jump right back into that story.
He'd stopped me just before I'd come to the dune's peak. I stumbled back down toward them, being careful not to tamper with the tracks or slip down the sandy hill. What's up? I asked. I scooted back down the dune. There's a good chance the kidnapper has set up camp just on the other side of us. Donald pointed to the smoke trail coming from the other side of this dune, a key detail I'd overlooked in my haste. Holy shit, this is actually happening, I exclaimed with a hush.
Yes, so we need a plan, Donald said. We probably should have bought some weapons in that shop or something.
I've always got a knife on me. I pulled out Daddy's old carver. The chipped-up blade and heavily wrapped handle was my only souvenir of my father's existence. That and my memories, of course. This was his grandfather's carver, passed down to him when Great Gramps died. One of the few valued possessions my father held, and the only possession I collected from his body.
Well, that's one weapon, Donald said. We'll have to rely on our numbers advantage. TM, when we go in the back, only attack if we need help. You'll have to be our trump card.
TM nodded.
Enry, Donald continued, you'll have to lead the attack with that knife of yours, but I'll be right behind you.
I nodded.
May the Lord Hickafu be on our side.
It was time to strike. I led the posse up the dune. I walked light with a crouched posture. Daddy's carver kept close to my heart. I felt Daddy was with me. My heart raced with each step closer to the dune's peak. I looked over my shoulder. Donald was close by with TM right behind. I lay on my stomach and crawled to the last few inches up to the dune's peak. Black smoke continued to plume from the other side. This had to be them. There was no one else in the wasteland. I wanted to get a full view of the situation before pouncing, so I crept up closer and closer until my eyes poked over the dune's peak. My eyes widened and my heart sunk. There was a whole collection of riffraff at the bottom of this dune, a small army of what had to be at least 45 lively ruffians. Judging by the tracks, I'd say a bulk of this gathering had come from the other side of the dune. They had 3 wagons filled with chained victims, more like merchandise for the auction, in their eyes. They had 4 carriages strapped to each wagon. This had to be some organized effort if they could afford both wagons and the animals to haul them. My palms sweated and my thoughts rushed. There was no hope of the 3 of us taking on a whole band of slave traders. There was no telling how well they were armed, neither. It was safe to assume that they could afford firing pistols, but I sure did hope that they'd blown their budgets on wagons and carriages. Most of the thugs were seated around a bonfire, sharing laughs and drinks. Laughs. Those bastards had the audacity to laugh about what they'd done. They were probably swapping stories like, "You won't believe what happened to me while I was snatching this dude," or "Hey, come check out this guy, he's real fit." My guts were churning and I wanted to launch my knife right at him, just for the satisfaction of seeing one drop. Daddy wanted it too. I could feel his will through his old carver, like he was calling out to me, "Do it, son. Throw me into one of those sons of bitches." I used my other hand to snuff the knife wielding hand back under my side. "Not now, Daddy," I said, under my breath. "You'll get your chance, I promise."
This changes things.
Donald tried to hide the hopelessness in his voice.
I guess we can head to Hillville and try and buy Kyle in the auction?
"No," I said. "You already dissected that plan, and I've finally got my eyes on my brother again."
You can't be sure that he's down there,
Donald said. Both Tim and I pointed straight to him. "I know my brother," I confirmed. "I can spot him in any crowd, even with a bag over his head and chains on his limbs. He shares my mother's face."
Okay,
Donald followed our point.
What's the plan then?
"We lay low and follow these assholes all the way to Hillville," I stated. "If they try anything, I'll be all over them."
We should hold off on getting all over them, Donald objected. We'll stick with laying low and watching for the time being.
"Duh," I mocked. "This is a rescue mission, not a suicide pact. But if they decide to get fresh with Kyle, there'll be no one left to rescue."
All right then, Donald said. We should set up camp and get some rest.
"You go on ahead," I said. "I'm keeping watch tonight." End of chapter 4.